Welcome back to Midnight Echo Radio. As always, I am your host, Seraphine Corven. Tonight's story begins with something ordinary: a stairwell, a locked apartment building, a sound where no sound should be. And then, slowly, it becomes something else, something impossible, something patient, something that does not just hear you, something that listens until it can become you. Settle in. I moved into the building in November, when the days were already getting dark too early, and the city had started taking on that dead, colorless look it gets before winter fully arrives. The place was old, but not charming old. Not the kind of old that makes people use words like historic or cozy. It was the other kind. The kind with yellowing paint in the hallways and water stains blooming across the ceiling tiles. The kind where the elevator shuddered every time it moved, and the pipes knocked inside the walls like someone trying very politely not to be let out. There were 6 floors, 12 units on each floor, and a narrow concrete stairwell at the far end of every hall, behind a heavy metal fire door with a wire-reinforced window. You could see into it through that little square of glass. Just gray steps, gray walls, a landing, another flight going up, another flight going down. I used the elevator most days. Everyone did. The stairwell smelled faintly of wet cement and old dust, and the motion lights inside it had a habit of taking a second too long to come on. Long enough, sometimes, to make you feel like you were stepping into a hole. Still, there was nothing remarkable about it. Not at first. The first strange thing I noticed was the echo. You hear strange acoustics in apartment buildings all the time. Voices carrying through vents, television through the floor, pipes making sounds like footsteps, doors slamming 3 floors away and somehow seeming right beside your ear. So when I started hearing noises in the stairwell late at night, I did what everyone does. I explained them away. A cough below me, shoes on concrete, the scrape of a hand against the railing. Sometimes, if I came home after midnight and stepped out of the elevator, I would hear movement behind the fire door at the end of the hall. Not loud, not frantic, just enough to suggest somebody else was in there. I never saw anyone, but I heard them. The strange part was the timing. Every time I heard something in that stairwell, I had the distinct feeling that whoever was inside had only started moving once I entered the hallway, as if they had been waiting through complete silence until the second they heard me come out of the elevator. Then, one cough, one step, a faint drag of a shoe, enough to let me know I was not alone on the floor. The first few times it happened, I looked through the little wired glass window. Nothing. Or, not nothing exactly. Just the stairwell. Concrete steps descending into that flat gray dimness, lit by the weak motion light overhead. No shadow moving across the landing. No person standing halfway down. No hand on the railing. But the sound had been real. I know it had. There is a particular feeling that comes with hearing another human being in an otherwise empty place. It is immediate, animal. Your body recognizes it before your mind does. And every time I heard something from behind that door, my body reacted before my thoughts caught up. Someone is there. I told myself maybe it was someone from another floor going down quietly. Maybe the acoustics were strange. Maybe the sound had come from somewhere else entirely. That explanation held for about a week. Then one night, I heard someone laugh. Not loudly. Not a full laugh, exactly. Just a short, breathless little sound from the other side of the fire door. A small, private laugh. The kind people make when they are alone and reading something on their phone. I froze halfway down the hall. I had laughed like that less than 10 seconds earlier. In the elevator. At something stupid I had read in a text. I stood there with my keys in one hand, grocery bag in the other, staring at the little square of wired glass at the end of the hallway. Then I laughed again. I do not know why. Reflex, maybe. To test it. And a second later, from inside the stairwell, the same laugh came back. Not similar. The same. Same shape. Same pitch. Same awkward breath at the end. For a moment, I genuinely thought there must be another person behind the door making fun of me. That would have been embarrassing. Weird, but human. I remember walking faster to my apartment, unlocking the door, stepping inside, and locking it behind me before I let myself look back down the hall. The fire door at the end remained closed. Still. Silent. I slept badly that night. Not because I thought something supernatural had happened, because I thought someone had been listening to me. There is a specific violation in that. Not danger exactly, not yet. Just the realization that for some amount of time, you have been observed by something you were not observing back. The next morning, it all seemed smaller, stupid almost. I told myself the sound had echoed strangely, that I was tired, that apartment buildings are full of overlapping noise and exhausted people looking for patterns. For the next several days, I avoided the stairwell entirely. If I passed the fire door, I did not look at it. If I heard a noise from behind it, I kept walking. I went to work, I came home, I kept my head down. And then, just when I had nearly convinced myself I had imagined the whole thing, I heard my name. Not shouted, not whispered. Spoken conversationally from behind the fire door in my own voice. As if I were standing on the other side, speaking through the metal. I had just stepped out of the elevator with my coat over my arm when I heard it. My name. The way I say it when I am talking to myself. Softly, under my breath, almost like I am checking whether I am alone. I stopped. The hallway was empty. The air had that stale, heated smell buildings get in winter, dry and dusty, with a trace of cleaning chemicals underneath. Somewhere far away, on another floor, a television was playing too loudly. But here, it was just me and the stairwell. I walked toward it before I realized I had made the decision. Slowly, quietly. As if whatever was behind the door might hear me coming, though of course it already had. At the little square of wired glass, I looked inside. The motion light clicked on with a dull electric hum. Gray landing, gray wall, metal railing. Nobody. Then, from below, maybe one floor down, maybe farther, I heard my voice say, very clearly, "Do not." I stumbled back so violently I hit the wall behind me. The voice had not sounded like an echo. It had not sounded distorted or far away. It had sounded exactly like me, speaking in a small, enclosed space. Only I had not spoken. I went inside my apartment. I locked the door. I turned on every light. Then I did something childish, but honest. I dragged a kitchen chair to the front door and sat there for almost an hour listening. Nothing happened. No footsteps outside, no knocking, no more voice. Just that old building breathing around me. I should have told someone. The super, a neighbor, anyone. But what exactly was I supposed to say? "Excuse me, I think the stairwell is repeating me." That is not a sentence you say out loud unless you are prepared for the way people look at you afterward. So I kept it to myself. That was my mistake. The next week is when it escalated. The sounds became more frequent. Not every night, but enough that I began bracing myself as soon as the elevator doors opened onto my floor. Sometimes I would hear footsteps descending when I was walking toward my apartment, matching my pace from the other side of the fire door. If I slowed down, they slowed. If I stopped, they stopped. Once, while unlocking my door, I heard something on the other side of the hall say, in my voice, "Hurry." Another night, as I passed the stairwell, I heard a faint murmur from below, my own voice again, but too quiet to make out the words. It sounded like someone speaking to themselves after bad news. The low, sick voice people use when they have forgotten anyone else can hear them. I started taking the long way home from work, just to delay coming back. Started wearing headphones in the hallway, though I never turned any music on. Just having something over my ears made me feel less available, less exposed. Then one night, around 1 a.m, the fire alarm went off. Not the full building alarm, just a brief electronic chirp from somewhere down the hall, followed by silence. I opened my apartment door a crack. The hall was empty. No smoke, no voices, no one checking on anything. Then I heard the stairwell door at the far end of the hall slam shut. I do not know why I went toward it. I have replayed that decision too many times, and I still do not understand it. Maybe I was angry, maybe exhausted. Maybe some part of me had become more afraid of not knowing than of finding out. The fire door was slightly ajar when I reached it. That alone was wrong. It was a heavy door, spring-loaded, meant to shut on its own. I had never once seen it left open. Through the narrow gap came the smell of cold concrete and something else underneath. Something damp. Not rot, not exactly. Just the smell of deep places where air does not move. I put my hand on the metal push bar and eased the door open. The motion light flickered on above the landing. Same gray steps, same railing. And the quiet was so complete it felt staged. Like whatever usually lived inside that stairwell had stopped breathing to listen. I should have closed the door and gone back inside. Instead, I stepped through. The door swung shut behind me with that heavy hydraulic sigh. I stood on the landing between the flights, listening. Upward, the stairs rose toward the higher floors, disappearing around the first turn. Downward, they dropped into shadow. Nothing. Then, faintly, from below, a cough. My cough. The one I had developed as a child every winter, a dry little throat clear I still made sometimes without noticing. I gripped the railing and looked down. The stairwell should have ended after 6 floors. Basement level at most. Storage, boiler room, exit. That was all the building was tall enough for. But below me, the stairs kept going. Landing after landing after landing, each lit by the same weak overhead fixture, descending far beyond any structure that should have physically existed beneath the building. At first, my mind refused to process it. The visual information was there, but it would not settle into meaning. It looked like a trick of perspective, a mirror, some distortion of depth. Then I leaned farther over the railing. The stairs continued downward until the repeating geometry blurred into dimness. No basement door, no concrete end wall, just more. My first thought, absurdly, was that I had never really looked down before. as if a person could fail to notice a bottomless shaft in the middle of their own building. Then my voice floated up from somewhere impossibly far below. I would not. So softly spoken, so close to amused. And I ran. I threw myself at the door to the hallway, hit the push bar, and waited for it to open. It did not. For one awful second, I thought it was locked. And that made no sense because fire doors do not lock from the inside. But panic does not care about building code. I hit it again, harder. The door opened. I stumbled into the hallway and nearly fell. Everything looked normal. The same dim carpet, the same yellow ceiling lights, the same row of apartment doors. I turned around at once. The fire door behind me was shut. No sound from within. I went back to my apartment, locked the deadbolt, and stayed awake until dawn. By morning, I had almost convinced myself I had imagined the depth of it. Not the voice, not the sound, but the impossible length of the stairwell. That part felt too large to believe in daylight. So I did what frightened people always do when they are desperate to become rational again. I tried to verify it. I took the elevator to the lobby and found the building directory near the mailboxes. 6 residential floors, basement laundry. That was it. I went outside and stood across the street looking up at the building. 6 floors, a flat roof. Nothing unusual. Then I looked down at the basement windows, half hidden behind iron grates near the sidewalk. Too shallow, too small. There was no world in which that building contained what I had seen the night before. I considered moving out right then, not eventually, immediately. Going upstairs, throwing clothes into a bag, leaving everything else behind. But fear is strange. It does not always push you away from things. Sometimes it fastens you to them. Sometimes the need to understand becomes its own kind of trap. That evening, I bought a flashlight. The next night, just after midnight, I opened the fire door again. I told myself I was only going to look. I told myself I would not go down. I told myself I wanted proof that the previous night had been some kind of stress hallucination. The door shut behind me. The motion light hummed awake. The stairwell descended into impossible repetition. And from somewhere below, in my own voice, something said, "I knew you would come back." I do not remember deciding to go down. I remember only the first few flights. The concrete steps felt slightly damp beneath my shoes. The metal railing was cold enough to sting my palm. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed softly, each one switching on as I reached its landing, and then dimming behind me after I passed. The air changed as I descended. It grew cooler first, then heavier, then still. Not stale exactly, just untouched, like air sealed in a room for years. I counted the floors at the beginning, 1 below my own, 2, 3, 4. By the time I reached what should have been the basement, I stopped counting. Not because I wanted to, because the numbers had stopped meaning anything. Each landing was identical. Same pale wall, same paint chips near the corners, same dark scuff marks on the concrete, same shadow pooled beneath the next descending flight. Every so often, I would hear something below me. A footstep, a breath, a hand brushing the railing. Never close enough to see. Always just enough to keep me moving. At some point, I became aware of another sound. Quiet at first. So quiet I mistook it for the hum of the lights. Then I realized it was a voice. Mine. Not speaking in full sentences, just fragments. Little pieces of speech I recognized from different times in my life. Be right there. I did not mean it like that. No, it is okay. Mom? That one stopped me completely. I had not said that word in months. Not since the hospital. Not since sitting beside my mother's bed, listening to the oxygen machine breathe for her in that dim room while she drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes recognizing me, and sometimes staring through me as though I were already part of the past. The voice below said it again. Mom? Only this time it sounded younger. Not my voice now, my voice at 12. Thin, unsteady, small. My flashlight trembled in my hand. Then, from somewhere lower still, came another fragment in my own adult voice. You left me here. I turned and started climbing, not walking, climbing, fast and faster, flashlight beam jumping wildly over the concrete walls. 1 flight, 2, 3. But the stairwell did not change. The same light above, the same landing, the same turn, the same next flight. I climbed until my lungs burned. Still the same. Still no fire door to my floor. I stopped only when I heard footsteps above me, not below, above, descending, slowly, measured. My hand tightened around the flashlight. I looked up. At first, there was no one there. Then, around the turn of the flight directly above me, a shoe appeared. Then another. A person was walking down toward me from the darkness above, 1 step at a time. I raised the flashlight. The beam shook so badly it took me a second to hold it steady. The light hit the railing, the wall, the edge of a coat sleeve. And then the figure stopped just beyond the landing, out of full view. Not hiding, waiting. I could hear it breathing. Then, in my voice, it said, "You should not look yet." I do not know how long I stood there. Seconds maybe longer. My body had gone past panic into something colder. Every nerve felt sharpened and distant at the same time, like I was inside myself, but 1 layer removed from control. The figure above shifted its weight. The concrete gave a faint little creak beneath the step. Then it spoke again, still in my voice, still perfectly. Turn around. I did not. Please, it said. And that word, please, was what broke me. Because it was not only my voice anymore. It was my manner, my rhythm, the precise softness I use when I am trying not to sound afraid. I backed down 1 step, then another. The figure above moved down 1 step too, always keeping the same distance, not rushing, not lunging, just following. I turned and went downward again because the only other option was to pass it. That was impossible. As I descended, the voice followed from above, sometimes speaking, sometimes just breathing quietly enough for me to hear between the hum of the lights. It began saying things I had never said out loud, things I had only thought, private, ugly little thoughts, petty grief, old resentment, shame I had not put into words even to myself. It said them gently, with sympathy, as if it understood me completely, as if it had been listening from closer than the stairwell for much longer than I knew. I reached another landing and nearly fell because I realized something had changed. There was a door there, a fire door, just like the one on my floor. Gray metal, reinforced glass, push bar across the center. I rushed to it. Through the wired glass, I could see a hallway. My hallway. My exact floor. My apartment door halfway down on the left, light spilling warmly from beneath it. For one wild second, relief hit me so hard, it almost made me dizzy. I shoved the push bar. The door opened inward. I stumbled into the hall. Everything was as it should be. Same carpet pattern, same smell of stale heat, same dent in the wall near the elevator where someone had once rammed furniture into it during a move. And there, halfway down the hall, my apartment door. Closed. Light beneath it. I started toward it, breathing hard, one hand still clenched around the flashlight. Then I saw the chain lock hanging on the outside. Not broken. Engaged from the outside, impossibly. As if someone had shut me out of my own apartment. The light beneath the door flickered. Then, from inside my apartment, I heard movement. A soft tread across the floorboards. A pause near the door. And my voice from inside said, "Do not let it in." I went cold all over. Behind me, the stairwell door eased open with a slow metallic groan. I turned. The figure from the stairs stood in the doorway. Same height as me, same coat, same flashlight in one hand. Its face was still hidden by shadow, but not fully this time. Enough of it caught the hall light for me to see the outline of my own jaw, my own mouth. It tilted its head the way I do when I am trying to understand something. Then the thing inside my apartment knocked once from the other side of the door. The figure in the hall did not move. My voice from inside the apartment said, more urgently, "Do not let it in." And the figure in front of me smiled. Only a little. Only enough. Then, in my voice, it said, "That is not you." The apartment door handle turned from the inside, slowly. The chain on the outside remained fastened. That should have been impossible, but by then, impossible had stopped carrying any force at all. The door opened inward until the chain caught. Through the narrow gap, I saw darkness. Not my lit apartment, just darkness. And in it, at the level where a face should have been, two pale reflections. Eyes, watching me. Then both voices spoke at once, one from the apartment, one from the hall behind me. Both mine, both calm. Come here. I do not remember choosing the stairwell. I only remember hurling myself sideways, slamming through the open fire door, and hearing one pair of footsteps behind me instead of two. I ran downward until I could no longer breathe. My flashlight flew from my hand at some point and clattered away into the concrete dark. The lights above me clicked on and off in sequence, chasing me deeper. The footsteps behind me never sped up. They kept the same pace, sometimes close, sometimes far enough away that I thought maybe I had finally lost it. Then my own voice would drift up from below as well as above. Above me, almost there. Below me, keep coming. I began to understand then. There had never been one of it. The stairwell was not a place something lived in. The stairwell was how it arranged itself around you. A place where every landing gave it more time to listen, more time to practice, more time to remove the difference between hearing you and becoming you. Eventually, the stairs ended, not in a basement, in a landing larger than the others, circular and dimly lit, with no visible source of light at all. No doors, no more descending flight. Just a wide concrete floor, damp walls, and a metal railing running around an open shaft in the center. I approached it because there was nowhere else to go. At the center of the landing, the shaft dropped away into blackness. I leaned over and heard thousands of voices rising softly from below. All of them mine. Some crying, some whispering, some laughing. Some saying things I remembered. Some saying things I did not. One of them, very near the top, said in a trembling voice, "Please do not make me go back up." Then footsteps entered the circular landing behind me. I did not turn. I could not. The voice that spoke next was close enough that I felt its breath against the back of my neck. My voice. Perfect. Tired, gentle, almost kind. "It takes a while," it said, "but eventually no one can tell." I looked down into the shaft again. Far below, in the dark, countless faint faces were lifting toward me. Or maybe they were only places where the dark had learned how a human face should be. The voice behind me said, "You only noticed because you were lonely." That hurt because it was true. Then it said, "And because you answer yourself when no one else is around." And that was true too. I turned. I wish I could tell you I saw something impossible, something monstrous, something that would have let my mind reject it immediately as unreal. But what stood there was only me. Not exactly as I was. Better in a terrible way. More precise. A version assembled from observation rather than life. Every gesture correct. Every proportion right. Even the expression on its face was mine, only emptied out and rebuilt without whatever it is inside people that makes an expression belong to them. It smiled at me with my own mouth. Then it stepped aside. Behind it, another staircase rose out of the circular landing and disappeared upward into dark. An exit, or something pretending to be one. "Go on," it said in my voice. "Go home." I should have known better. I did know better. But terror narrows the world until any direction that is not immediate death starts to look like mercy. So I took the stairs up. I climbed for what felt like hours. Eventually, I found a fire door. My hand shook so badly on the push bar, I nearly missed it. The door opened, and I stepped into my apartment. My real apartment. At least, I think it was. The kitchen light was on, just as I had left it. My coat was hanging where I usually hung it. A mug sat on the counter with a ring of dried coffee at the bottom. My bed was unmade. The air smelled faintly of dust and radiator heat. Normal. Painfully normal. I locked the door. I pushed a chair under the knob. I sat on the floor in the living room until sunrise. Nothing happened. For 3 days after that, everything was quiet. I did not go to work. I did not answer calls. I barely slept. I kept expecting some proof that I had brought something back with me. But the apartment remained still. On the 4th night, just after 2 a.m, I woke to the sound of someone moving around in the kitchen. Not crashing, not searching, just small domestic sounds. A glass lifted from the counter, a cabinet opening, a spoon set gently into the sink. I lay in bed without moving, every muscle locked so hard it hurt. I lived alone. From the doorway of my bedroom, in a voice so soft and familiar, it filled me with instant helpless dread. I heard myself say, "You took longer than the others." I did not answer. The voice moved a little closer. "Next time," it said, "when you hear me in the stairwell, do not run." Then I heard my own laugh, the exact same laugh from the elevator. Small, breathless, private, right beside my bed. That is why I'm telling you this now. Because the building still has only 6 floors. Because the fire door at the end of the hall still looks ordinary. Because every so often, late at night, when I stand very still in my kitchen, I can hear footsteps descending from somewhere impossible below me. And sometimes, just before I fall asleep, I hear my own voice in the other room, trying out different versions of my name, as though it still has not decided which one sounds most like me. So if you ever live in a building where the stairwell seems deeper than it should be, and if one night you hear something below you, speaking in a voice you know better than any other voice in the world, do not answer it. Do not follow it. And whatever you do, if you make it back home and the apartment is quiet, do not let that comfort you. Sometimes the thing that learns your voice is not trying to get out. Sometimes it is only waiting to hear how you use it when you think you are alone. Good night.